My name is Stephanie, last name Utesch. I'm a team leader here at Darktrace. I've been at Darktrace for about 2 years. Previous to that, I worked for companies like Oracle and Penske Truck Leasing. So I have quite a bit of experience in all facets of the industry. So I've got my camera on so you can see who I am, but I will go ahead and turn it off in the interest of bandwidth. If anyone has any questions about Darktrace or about the future of cybersecurity that we're seeing, please do not hesitate to reach out to me or send questions in the chat. But again, it's lovely to be here as a panelist, and I'll get started. Perfect. So I don't know how much all of you have heard about Darktrace, but a little bit of insight to who we are as a company. So we just recently, I think April 30th was the 1-year anniversary of the Darktrace IPO on the London Stock Exchange. That's neither here nor there, I'd say, as far as the IPO, but what's really important to note is that with Darktrace, 48% of that capital that has gone into, that came from the IPO has gone into research and development of our product, which I'll tell you about in just a second. So we've had a 100% increase in our core development team, and then we were founded in Cambridge in 2013. So we deploy across 110 different countries, and I think that we have, I think the number is 7,000 at this point for the customers that we have. So a bit about Darktrace. The way that you can think about Darktrace is based on principles of the human immune system. So we have unsupervised machine learning. Now, if you think about your body, say, for example, you get a pathogen in your body, like I coincidentally have today, that was not planned. If you get a pathogen in your body is not necessarily in need of knowing what that is. What they need to know, or what your cells need to know, is just the fact that it's not normal and to take action on that. So, you're not going to be having to be put in a coma or something like that if you get a cold, right? You can continue to function as normal while your immune system attacks and understands that this not normal pathogen is what is needs to be remediated. So that's what Darktrace is doing with the self-learning AI. So really understanding normal versus not normal patterns of life. Now, we also don't need any historical attack data, because our machine learning is just understanding the behavior of the network. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later in this presentation, but we're looking at normal versus not normal, not necessarily known bads, known goods, whitelist, blacklist, those kinds of things. And where Darktrace really fits into the 2022 threat landscape, especially with healthcare, is the geopolitical cyber conflict. So I'm not going to go into that too much, because obviously that's a tough topic to breach, but there are multiple things that healthcare affects. So the geopolitical cyber conflict, software supply chain attacks, so things like SolarWinds, Kaseya, Log4j, insider threat is a huge one. And so, within the healthcare organization in particular, things are moving quickly, and with healthcare, healthcare organizations are particularly targeted, which we hate to admit, or we hate to say, but they're particularly targeted just because of the volatility of what's going on. And so protecting against those things, being proactive versus reactive, is what Darktrace's machine learning is really looking to do. And insider threat is a big one as well. So in my opinion, that word is pretty heavy, but it doesn't mean that there's an insider who's trying to do something malicious. It's an insider who may be unaware. You may have a new individual within your organization who doesn't necessarily know your software systems. They don't know your processes. They may do something that isn't necessarily aligned with what you would like for the organization, and that's an insider threat, because we can't model human behavior all the time, but Darktrace can. Darktrace is looking at that normal human behavior. And then the last thing that I really wanted to bring up here is ransomware will continue to evolve. So backup servers and cloud infrastructure. So a lot of times there are solutions who are looking at the advanced outside skin of an organization, but not necessarily the crown jewels, not necessarily the behavior of a server. So that's what really Darktrace is doing with the machine learning. And the other thing that I really wanted to bring up as well in the 2022 threat landscape is IoT devices. So having visibility into what an IoT device can do is really critical, especially in the healthcare organization now. In particular, I'd say because a lot of devices are online, right? It helps with business continuity. It helps with, what you guys are doing. It helps with even continuity with charting and employees and patient data. So having all of that over the internet is really important, and that comes from a lot of IoT devices. However, that's a really great in for some sort of threat actor to kind of squeeze in through the back door. So Darktrace is looking at behavior that might deviate from that. So that's really a good overview of what that is. And then I'd say 78% of IT professionals lack confidence in their company's cybersecurity posture. Now, that's not any kind of insult. I think that's comes from paranoia because of these day zero attacks, and it rightfully so, right? And so Darktrace is looking, with that normal behavior, and that's where that comes from. And then secondly, 22% of organizations feel they lack visibility into the cloud. Given the changing work environment, cloud is where people and businesses are able to continue. I can say personally, but before my role at Darktrace, when the pandemic first hit, companies were so worried about trying to move to the cloud because of this, and Darktrace is covering that behavior via the cloud landscape, covering those normal logins, those normal activities within the cloud, and really understanding that the future of cybersecurity and the future of IT at the foundation is the cloud, because we're not going to go back to a quote normal working environment. And something I did want to bring up is the rearview mirror. So a lot of cybersecurity tools are relying on rules, signatures, and playbooks. No matter how quickly you can update these things, you don't really know how quickly these other threat actors are also updating their executables or the things that they are doing, right? So it's pretty retrospective and not necessarily proactive. So where Darktrace's machine learning is coming in, knowing that normal pattern of life of every device, if there is some deviation from pattern of normal, that's where Darktrace comes in. And then existing cybersecurity tools are lacking in visibility and context. I would say the panel that we're here with today, it's all about context, right? We're all here, pushing the same idea of we need visibility and we need context. And so that's where Darktrace is coming in as well to kind of, like the previous speaker said, a layered approach, that single pane of glass, understanding, what context looks like. Also, I would say responses are a little bit too timid or too aggressive. So what Darktrace is doing is really giving that proportional with our anti-GINA autonomous response, responding only simply to those deviations from pattern of normal. We're not being too timid or too aggressive. We're really looking to make sure that we're not impacting business continuity. And I think all of us on this panel can agree, we're not looking to impact business continuity. We're looking to help enrich business continuity and protect the individuals without them having to, make changes. And with that being said, I think that there are two pieces that we all need to focus on with the future of cybersecurity, and that's the technology ecosystem and the human ecosystem. So Darktrace has a continuous loop of investigation, integration, response, and detect. So we're always looking with our machine learning to understand what's going on within the network, what's going on within the technology ecosystem. So that could be a server, a device, you name it, hardware-wise, understanding the normal pattern of life there, but also understanding those deviations and responding. Darktrace machine learning is continuously investigating and integrating into whatever you have that might that you might want to layer on. But the thing that I really wanted to point out here in particular is the human ecosystem. Now, I would say human beings. I'm a psych major by trade, and the human ecosystem. While we're all creatures of habit, there are some deviations from normal that need to be monitored that some security tools can't always see. So things like a person who might have been let go of the organization and they still have access and credentials, taking data off of the network, taking their CRM system. Let's give me for an example. Say I'm a salesperson and I leave the organization, but I want to take my leads with me. I would never do that, right? But that would be something that Darktrace would monitor, because that's not something I normally do as a person. And so that's where the Darktrace human immune system is really coming into play, and kind of helping out with those things. And I mentioned autonomous response. So our autonomous response is basically a decision-making brain that can take targeted action to neutralize in-progress attacks, make thousands of calculations at machine speed, real-time data, allows business to continue uninterrupted by acting proportionately, protects the entire digital estate. Really, to summarize what all of these points mean is that our autonomous response is not trying to take action by taking a computer off the network. So remember my analogy of, if you get a cold, you're not going to be down and out, right? You're going to be able to continue on with your day to day while your immune system works to remediate and get rid of the pathogen that's in your body. And then let's say it's a virus like what I have right now. Your body is going to know that in particular was something that it had never seen before but doesn't want to see again. And so we're going to always be responding to those things. And that's really what Darktrace can do. And then to really put it into perspective, Darktrace anti-GINA autonomous response can respond over all different parts of your digital estate. So email, network, cloud, SaaS, and endpoint. This whole digital estate motto is, I think, born out of the pandemic, let's be honest, where a lot of us have begun to communicate in a different way, probably permanently, although that poses certain risks. And there might be people who communicate only via email, and they're, in the finance department, they're clicking on links, trying to pay invoices, those kinds of things. Your network, your crown jewels, cloud, where people are using to do business functions from different parts of the world, SaaS, those kinds of things. And then endpoint, those people that don't necessarily VPN. Darktrace can use the technology that we have with our machine learning and our autonomous response across all of that. So if you look here, some examples. So, obviously we have I guess it's not obvious, but we do have a really strategic partnership with Microsoft. Microsoft is not a security company, but they do have security products, which is why Darktrace has Microsoft has brought in Darktrace as a partner, security-wise. And so, to provide that autonomous response and provide that extra layer. So again, really speaking to that digital estate. And if you're looking here, we've got Zoom, Duo, all of your SaaS applications, your cloud, in addition to, parts of your network, Cisco, Palo Alto, Fortinet, Zscaler, all of these things. This is where Darktrace is really able to apply that machine learning to give you that autonomous response in addition to that visibility that you're looking for. And then obviously stopping threats at multiple stages is really important, and that's where Darktrace really comes in and helps with that and that proportional action. And then we did have a threat find of crypto mining that I wanted to bring up. So they sought to infiltrate the security team vulnerabilities, and the anomalous activity with Darktrace was a compromised device beaconing to a new endpoint in Hong Kong. So context here with this, Hong Kong was probably not a normal endpoint that this individual was contacting, and it was an outbound transfer of 1 gigabyte. So what Darktrace's recommended actions were blocking the connections to that unusual endpoint. The person probably didn't even know, and then stopping that unusual executable file download. So, with an average cost of a data breach being 7.3 million at this point, this is really where you want to focus your attention, is things like this, these little tiny abnormalities. And then I think what would make the most sense is basically explaining how we build trust and confidence in AI. So the passive model. So Darktrace is building trust, so action it would take. Now within the healthcare space, we want to build trust because we don't want to take these devices offline. So we want to build trust in the action that the autonomous response would take. And then secondly, human confirmation mode. So obviously within healthcare organizations, there are a lot of devices that are online, but you don't want to necessarily take an action or have the autonomous response take an action before you're ready for it. So we start with human confirmation mode. Again, building that confidence. This is the whole maturity model. So keeping the human in the loop. And then we work towards autonomous mode. So that's, as the machine learning continues to become more enriched, taking tailored actions and areas to your risk, compliance, and security needs. We want to build up with you where you're confident, right? We want to work alongside simultaneously with the security team. And I think that really is the future of cybersecurity. I'm really passionate about this, as you can tell, is that Darktrace will work side by side with your security team to give them time to eat and sleep, especially in healthcare, but also that visibility and understanding that not every single situation is the same. That's where machine learning really comes in. And with that being said, I just wanted to share a couple of testimonials and conclude my presentation.